start, just let us know what's been going on, if there's anything you'd like to share.
Well, we've been following the events in Ukraine, as I'm sure most of you have. And it's cause for concern for the world order. And we'll see what happens. Some of the devotees on here are very close to there in Poland, in Romania, and they'll probably feeling it that much more. Some of our devotees in Poland have been taking refugees, both devotee refugees and just ordinary people as well, trying to help house them, feed them, so forth. It's, I think, almost 400,000 refugees have fled the country. And so, yeah, I've been watching that and with some concern. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
We live in a dangerous world. But otherwise, safest place is in the kirtan of the holy name. So let's take some questions and we'll try to respond and call it a kirtan.
So far we have, I think, 4 questions. So we'll get more in after. Okay. Oh, Shama Sundar said he can't paste his question. Okay. So let's start with Omkar's question. He also had trouble with the audio. So his question is it possible to surprise Krishna since he already knows everything?
Well, there's 2 sides to Krishna. There's his all-knowing side, which is, leans towards his majesty and Aishvarya, and then his Mugdha, his side where he's covered, and in terms of his omniscience by the power of love of his extraordinary intimate associates in Braj. And so in that setting, then he can be surprised. That's why I say sometimes that, if you're omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, it might sound desirable, but if you think deeply about it, it might turn out to be pretty boring. If you know everything, well, there's nothing to do. If you're everywhere already, there's nowhere to go. You've got all the power. So what does God do in that condition? Well, what do you do on your board? Then you play. You make up something to do. So it's a way of looking at the Leela. We think it is a higher form of knowing, because to love one is to know one. And to love you is to know you. It's an old song from the 50s. So that's our theme, right? That those who, and that's the statement of the Gita also, with the Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, the king of knowledge is Manmanabhava Bhakto, Madhyajimam, love me. That's what Krishna says, just love me. And these are some of the ways in which you can do so. Absorb your mind in me, so so become my devotee. So it's also, in that regard also, it's said that another word, another meaning for gopi is vidya. And so it's thought that the gopis love is another way of talking about it, is the highest knowledge. Um, and so even while we are speaking of the fact that Krishna could be surprised, for example, in that realm, we're speaking about the form of the Godhead that is the highest form of knowing at the same time, beyond omniscience. I think it's a peculiar and particular only to Gaudiya Vaishnava theology that there's knowledge beyond omniscience, and it's love. So Krishna says Napare aham in Bhagavatam, and that should startle the readers. Napare aham. I can't. I'm unable. He says, I'm unable. What? Krishna is unable? And then the text goes on to say, even if I tried for the life of the gods, I would still be unsuccessful. He's that unable? What's going on here? And this is, of course, how he is responding to the full measure of the gopis' love that he witnesses, as was his desire, by creating separation between them and him in the midst of their union in the Rasa Lila. He disappeared to see the measure of their love and separation, because it's said that when you lose something that you're attached to, then the measure of your attachment or your love for the thing is really amplified or underscored. And so he wanted to see, but when he saw, it kind of knocked him out. And he realized that he was up against a force that was greater than himself, love for himself. Of course, that's an aspect of himself. That's his internal energy. But anyway, this is very core to the Gaudiya theology, where he could be unknowing, where he could be surprised, where he could be unable, and so forth. It's really talking about Krishna with Radha, with Shakti. Krishna with Shakti is more capable, more knowing, more possibilities lie there. The more the Shakti is present and active, even when it looks as if he doesn't know. He claims that he's unable, and so forth. So after all, what it is, as I've often said, something within himself that gives the gopis the power that they have. There's something in him that drives them to their condition, which he himself is shocked by and overwhelmed by and controlled by. So it is him. He's it. But that fullness of himself is realized by their love. And so, therefore, he wants to take their position. This verse, of course, I'm speaking about is the genesis of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, yes, Krishna can be surprised, but don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if he turns around and surprises you at the same time. Okay, what else?
Okay, Shamasundar is going to open up his mic and ask his question.
Good morning, if I can. I can hear them in the background. Yeah, I can hear them in the background. We hear the cicadas. I hear this morning you saw a leopard. Yeah, wow, exciting. Yeah, another one. Yeah. Okay. Can you still hear me, Martin?
Yes, someone had their mic on. Turned off.
Okay. It's a pretty gentle jungle down there overall.
Cheetah looked like a cheetah, he said. Somebody said.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a long question. I don't think the answer would be short compared. We'll see what we can make out.
Yeah. Here come the cicadas.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there are I want to say there are spiritual and material manifestations of all of the elements. So, Bhumirapo and Alovayu Kamanubhuri, which are ahamkara iti. Vina Prakriti Rashida, Krishna says in the Gita, this is my separated material energy. It's constituted of these 8 elements. Ahamkara being one of them: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ahamkara. That is his separated material energy. But there are spiritual manifestations of the same. So, yes, here you say it's real water. Well, all you can really say is it's water made by, manifest out of the Maya Shakti. So there's water manifest out of the Swarup Shakti as well. And similarly, there's ahamkara. In fact, Krishna's has antakara, and he has a mind, he has a body. Krishna has a body, he has a mind, he has senses, body senses, he has chitta, buddhi, intellect, and ahamkara, which kind of brings the antakara and the subtle body together into I want to say a whole, an identity. So, in fact, there are 4 coward boys, according to the Tantra, Gautamiya Tantra, that are personifications of Krishna's chitta, buddhi, manas, and ahamkara. Dham, Vasudham, Kinkini, and Sudham. So, yes, Krishna has ahamkara. He has a sense of identity, and this is an inherent quality of the jiva also, sense of I am. So, I've often said, in the material world, we think I am this or I am that, and it's false. But the I am is not false. All the thises and the that's are changing all the time, but what's constant is that I am. So I don't stop being I am in liberated life. We're talking about Krishna Lila, our ideal, the Prem, Prayojan, and there I am a Gopa or I am a Gopi. That's the this or that. The difference, of course, between that, I am this or that, Gopa, Gopi, and the I am this or that, I am man or I am woman, African American, Russian, Ukrainian, and so forth. In the material world, of course, is that the latter is a fleeting sense of identity that doesn't endure. But I said the I am does. But on the other side, the former, I am a Gopa or a Gopi, that's enduring because those are bhavas that are eternal. So we identify with a particular bhava, and and an identity arises out of that. So there is a spiritual ahamkara, if you will. And you speak about yogis meditating on Brahman or Paramatma, and you posited the idea that they don't have a sense that I am. I'm not sure that you would look at it like that. I am Brahman is how, for example, the Advaitins like to look at things. I am Brahman. They haven't done away with the I am. Of course, they're radical in their non-dualism. So how it ends up, I am. Yeah, there's no duality there, if you will. Or yoga, samadhi, I am the Paramatma, or I am. There's duality there in yoga siddhanta. There's the Paramatma, Ishwar, and then there's the Purusha. In this case, means in our terms the jiva. So if you have, there is a, like there's Brahma Sayuja, there's Paramatma Sayuja, so there's a merging with the Paramatma. But when we think I am the Paramatma, then there's an example of that in Bhagavatam. A fellow in Dwarka who considered himself to be Vishnu. I am Vishnu. Vishnu, then effectively, Pondraka, I think was his name. So he was pursuing, I guess you could say, Paramatma Sayuja. But above that would be, for example, Shantarasa, the passive adoration of the Paramatma on the part of the Bhakta. I mean, I'm referring to it as a duality, of course. It's non-dual in the big picture of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but there's a duality in the sense that, well, there's you and there's Bhagavan, so there's unity and there's a difference. So when you enter into the Krishna Lila, then it's just accentuated that much more. Yes, every how could the Lila be human-like and afford the intimacy with Bhagavan that it does, if all of if no one had any sense that everyone thought I'm God, or everyone is thinking, yes, I'm a cowherd boy, I'm a gopi, this is my identity, and this is Krishna. He lives in my neighborhood. We're all part of the same village here. So they very much have a sense of identity, and ahamkara is present there. But it's like there's a spiritual form of water, earth, and fire. So of all the other, if you will, elemental ingredients of on the other side in the material world. So another question, and for that matter, it behooves one to the extreme in one sadhana to think, I am a cowherd boy, I am a gopi, as the central focus of one's sadhana, which is a positive way, if you will, of deconstructing the I am a Kshatriya, I am a Brahmin, I am a man, I'm a woman, I'm an American, I'm a Russian, and so forth. We deconstruct that false identity by positing a real, an eternal, and enduring sense of identity. That's very central to the sadhana. Mahaprabhu said, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not a Brahmana, Kshatriya, sannyas. I'm the servant of the Gopi Bhartu Parakamalayo Das Das Anadas, of the master of the gopis. So he says what does he say in Shikshastakam? Asli Shiva Padaratam Panashtam. No. Yeah. Asli Shiva Padaratam Panashtam Adarsham Amatam Kuroti Tatata Babhidatu. No, that's the last verse. What is it? What am I thinking of? Fourth verse, fifth verse. Ayi Nanda Kinkaram. Ayi Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram. the son, the Nanda Tanuja, the Nanda, it means the son of Nanda. Mahaprabhu is saying, Ay Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitamam Vishame Babamado. He's identifying himself. He says, I want to live in the house of Nanda Maharaj, as a girl would if she were to marry Nanda Maharaj's son. That's what he's saying. I want to live in the house of Nanda Maharaj. I'm a maid servant of Krishna. So this is this verse represents asakti. So this is the last stage of sadhana bhakti, entering into bhava bhakti. So there's very much there's a sense of self, even as that self is wholly one with Bhagawan. He doesn't have a different desire from Bhagawan. He is, or she is, an instrument through which Bhagawan is fulfilling any number or one of his innumerable desires, or his experiencing his unlimited pursuit of the taste of rasa through yet another vehicle. So there's a oneness and there's a difference at the same time. We tend to emphasize the difference. But as I said before, the Siddha is an extension of Bhagavan's own body, extension of his own senses. And he experiences then through that body Rasananda. And you do too. So you're there and he's there. Another question?
Okay, we have the Brighton Sangha, and Amrita Gopal has a question.
Yes.
Maharaj.
Yes.
I'm very hopeful that you can elaborate on an instruction given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His admonition was that we mustn't ever consider the Guru to be a human being, to be ordinary in any sense. And I'd be very grateful if you can elaborate on that instruction and how it expands into understanding sadhus as well, because there's an inherent parity between sadhu and guru, and considering Guru Tattva, where Guru is considered one. I'm hopeful that you can clear up some misunderstanding that I may have about that instruction. And secondly, I was listening to a class given by Rameshwar Prabhu. He was giving a class over the weekend speaking about the 20th disappearance anniversary of Sri Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. And he was speaking about you with great affection and fondness. And I would be very, very grateful to hear some words about that period in 1975, where Srila Prabhupada was stoking the competition between all of you great book distributors, and particularly your remembrances of Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your questions. They're quite different in one sense. I think that we are cautioned, this may help, to not to think of the deity as a stone. Arche Vishnu Shilaliya Gurushu Naramate. So Jati Buddhi, Vaishnavi Jati Buddhi. So it's a famous statement from I believe from the Padma Purana. Arche Vishnu Shilaliya. You know it? Gurushu Naramate. So just as one should not think of the Archa Vigraha, the deity of Krishna, to be a stone. Now, you've probably practiced that, not thinking of the deity as a stone, although the deity, the divinity is manifest in stone, manifest in wood, as may be the case, or earth and clay image. One should not think the deity, the Archa Vigraha, to be a stone. That means that what? That your eyes our eyes can deceive us, right? You can't judge a book by looking at the cover. So we are trained, therefore, to see with a philosophical eye. The term that's often invoked in this regard is Shastra Chakshu. So Chakshu means eyes, to see through the eyes of the scripture. To see with that's your third philosophical eye, if you will, to see in that way. And then, of course, conducting yourself in accordance with that vision, you should get experience that confirms what's being said there. So if you treat the deity not like a stone, but like Krishna, even though he, in some sense, is symbolic, as a symbolic representation of Krishna, that doesn't, I don't mean like in an enlightened sense, but a symbolic representation. And there's there you're in the realm of ritual, and there are certain ways in which we conduct ourselves in the realm of ritual. Ritual, has its own language, its own procedures. Turn here, pour water here, pour water there, pour water everywhere, and utter this sound, utter that sound, and so on and so forth. So this is a symbolic realm. This is a realm that is finite in appearance, but eternal if we enter into it through the appropriate language, conceptual orientation, and so forth that is recommended. So again, the experience then is corresponds. So I bring this up in the same verse, Arche Vishnu Guru Shunaramati. So similarly, it said, one should not think the guru to be an ordinary person. Well, that would be kind of hard to do if there's a guru figure in our life that is actually bringing about a transformation in our life by imparting knowledge and setting an example that we can follow, which if we do, we get experience again. Experience here I'm citing as the ultimate praman, the ultimate evidence. I would caution, however, that not to take this kind of mandate, that we should not see the guru as an ordinary human being, as something that makes us, that takes us in the direction of some kind of neurosis. I'm explaining it in a broader way. Someone who is giving us knowledge of Krishna consciousness that we couldn't have uncovered on the strength of our own mental, intellectual, physical powers, is arguably giving us something from beyond the reach of those powers. And it's affecting us. Of course, with the knowledge comes again the instruction to apply the knowledge, right? Then comes the experience. So if we want to be cemented in this understanding, then we have to practice and get experience. But even prior to that, we're receiving insights. Typically we receive insights from the guru figure about that which is right in front of our face that we couldn't see ourselves. You might be able to see it yourself if you really tried hard, some of it, but for the most part, it's not the case. For example, attachment to things, the things that we pursue, is the womb from which suffering is born. Who thinks like that? Everyone is pursuing things, trying to acquire in the pursuit of happiness. And the scripture and the guru who represents the scripture, of course, is telling us, well, actually, what your attachment is the womb from which suffering is born. So this is like, whoa, kind of like, kind of Zen. It's kind of like less is more, or turn things around, right? Those kind of things, just getting a simple example that are right in front of our face. And this is the sum and substance of the teaching of the Buddha. I mean, it really doesn't go beyond that. The world is about suffering. And what causes the suffering is the thirst for things. So stop pursuing things. So he sat down. That's all he did. He just sat down. Not hard. Just sit down. Well, it's not so easy just to sit down. The mind is active as it is, and we have attachments in our hearts, and that's causing us to be active in pursuit of them, and so on. And so the life of suffering. So these are just very powerful insights into what's right before us that we can't see. Now we're supposed to really embrace those things, because the Guru has shown us these things that we couldn't see, that were right there in front of us. Now he or she is also talking about things that we can't see and that aren't right in front of us. Atashi Krishna namadi nabhapadrai sevanmukhi jivado swayameva spratyada. With these eyes, you cannot see Krishna. With these ears, you cannot hear. With these senses, you cannot experience Krishna. With the senses, you can experience what is suffering and where it's coming from, and so forth. So he's telling us about other things, but we have faith in what she's saying, Shri Guru, that we can't experience because of what we've been told that is right in front of us, and now we're seeing it, and we can immediately put it into practice, and to some extent, at least, experience the validity of it. And so that which is now something that we will experience by further application of the teaching and so forth, that we can't as of yet, well, we have reason to have faith in that. So these are the things that we received from the Guru. These are, as I said, things that for the most part, with the exercise of our mind and intellect, we couldn't arrive at. You could arrive at the former, the attachment is the source of suffering, but it would be hard. Not too many people do that. But with the help of a person who's compelling by way of having put that in practice himself or herself, well, then we get a real jump start, if you will, into understanding that. So this is very uncommon. So then how you would think of that person as common? Well, because he does other things, he eats like I eat, and he just needed to go to the bathroom, and that's what humans have to do, and so therefore we're told, yeah, step back. Yeah, the deity's not a stone. Well, I knocked on him and it sounded like a stone, and it didn't feel like, lotus feet, but we stop ourselves from thinking like that, right? Because we've been informed otherwise, and we've had some glimpses into that fact. We look at the deity, even though we can't see everything, perhaps, and the deity's not talking to you, which would be a problem. Then you wouldn't be able to have time to do anything else. So that's why Prabhupada said the deity's Krishna coming to you in a form that you can handle. But sometimes he talks, then you're in trouble. But other people may come for the first time to the temple. They are not seeing what you're seeing. So you're actually seeing differently, and by application of the teachings and so forth, and looking at the deity through the eye of the scripture. So in a broad sense, I don't think it's so hard not to think it's not that easy, I should say, to fall into thinking of the Guru as an ordinary person. It's kind of not thinking very, very, very deeply that would cause that. But the fact that if you want to say the divinity is appearing in the form of the guru, well, the form has its its limitations as well, just like the stone deity has apparent limitations. So the human form has limitations. It's going to age. It's going to pass away, so on and so forth. So that's a given. Then there's a psychology of the guru also. There's the physicality of the guru. There's a psychology of the guru. Our psychology may match with our guru. It may not match that well with our guru. That's why sometimes it's recommended, well, if you're a Sudra, you should have a Sudra guru. If you're a Brahmin, you should have a Brahmin guru. That's all Varnashram system. That is an attempt to line up the relative and the absolute both, so that the transmission, the capacity for transmission will be enhanced. I remember sometimes we sit with Prabhupada in India, and after the lecture, he gave a darshan, let's say, in his room, and there's some new Indian boy that's been brought in. So after the darshan, Prabhupada says, "So did you understand?" And he would nod, and Prabhupada would go, "Huh? Then what was going on there?" Well, you go down and find that there's a boy in the kitchen washing pots, So Prabhupada was able to communicate with him, given the cultural similarities and so forth, in ways that he couldn't as readily perhaps communicate with students from another culture. Of course, ultimately we want a guru that's qualified spiritually, but if we have one that's spiritually qualified and also relatively similar, culturally speaking, psychologically speaking, to ourselves, well, then you got a better conduit there for the transmission. And that said, when we go on that side, what will cause us to think of the guru as an ordinary person? Well, the ordinary things that he or she does. But if we love the guru, then the ordinary things are no longer ordinary, right? Mother said that mother named her blind son Padmalochan. Means lotus eyes. Anyone who's blind people often wear sunglasses because their eyes don't look beautiful. But for the eyes of the mother in love, the blind son, she said, "Oh, we should name him Padmalochan. His eyes are so beautiful." So that's just the power of love. So love, which arises, of course, out of the, initially from gratitude. You've shown me something that I couldn't see myself. How big is that? Wow, what I've been shown. Therefore, there's an indebtedness. Love begins with gratitude, and then if we apply ourselves, as I'm saying, then in time, the humanness of the guru, which might lead one student to think of him or her as being ordinary, will have just the exact opposite effect on another. We'll like the ordinariness that much more. That brings the guru a little closer to us, in a sense. The guru has to be a little careful. Sometimes the example is given of a fire. Well, you can't get too close to a fire, but you can't stay too far away from it either. You won't have warmth, you won't be able to cook. If you get too close, you'll get burned. So the guru has to navigate the course there. Some disciples can sit closer, some need to sit a little bit more of a distance. He's not keeping them at a distance because he doesn't like them, because he likes them. Because this is a method for bringing them in. Some might think, well, Gurudev made me sit in the back, had me sit over there and let the other one sit here. I guess he doesn't love me. Or then your mind's going in that direction. No, there's more wisdom to it than you might understand or might realize. But some can be very close, and in such instances, the humanness of the guru is becoming more inspiring than the transcendental knowledge that he or she imparts. Even so, I think there's some thoughts on that. I caution you not to get neurotic about such cautions and so forth. which happens to a lot of devotees when you talk about aparad, and this is one thinking the guru is an ordinary, but there is some ordinariness, and that's okay, some ordinariness, but it's extraordinariness, something like that. As far as Tamal Krishna Goswami goes, well, I knew him pretty well. There's things I liked about him, and there's things I didn't like about him. It was probably mutual on his part as well. He had a difficult time understanding me, and he told me that, how I could just sit down and give a class without preparing for it or anything. And Prabhupada had said that I was the incarnation of book distribution, and he was always scratching his head trying to figure that out. I was kind of like a Shiva Tattva. My name is Tripurari, which is the name for Shiva. I wasn't a GBC. At one point, I wasn't a sannyasi either, but I wasn't like with the rest of the devotees, but I was on the street with the rest of the devotees. And so it's kind of was kind of a confusing figure for some. He was one of them who told me that about himself. He was a little older than me, and in some ways more of a mature human. But yeah, I got to know him quite well, and we served together for some years also. And those years were the years that he came to the United States. He was the GBC of India at the time, prior to that. And he actually wanted to get a little bit away from the fire of Prabhupada. He had a management position as the GBC, but Prabhupada was the super GBC of India. So the GBCs of India didn't have the kind of autonomy that the GBCs of North America or Europe or other places had, because Prabhupada, of course, it was India, so it was his place, and he knew how things worked better. So he was more hands-on there with the projects, and he had to be for them to work, because his disciples couldn't figure everything out, how the country worked, how the people worked, and so forth. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me, he said, I need to get a little bit of autonomy. And I thought, that I will go to America and I'll make devotees, that'll be pleasing to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada gave him permission to come to America. That was probably, I think he came in 1975, which is the year I took sannyas. I took sannyas in 1975, and March or April, and he came to the Americas shortly thereafter, which is when I got to know him. And when he started his party of he got his old friend Vishnu John. They used to live in a commune together in Northern California as hippies, and so they were old acquaintances. So he reunited with Vishnu John Maharaj, who had a bus, beat up old bus with the Radha Damodar deities that he used to travel around in, and do kirtan and serve them and so forth. So he connected with him, and he wasn't like Vishnu John Maharaj. They were very different people. So he was an organizer, and very meticulous kind of organizer about where everything should go, how it should go, and so on and so forth. Mr. John was very like spontaneous and not keeping track of things. I'm a bit like that myself too. So the combination of those two anyway was good to an extent. And they started this party of buses, many buses, 5, 6 buses, and filled with brahmacharis and so on and so forth. And he wanted to please Prabhupada by making devotees. So that summer, shortly thereafter, Prabhupada came to America, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj had made 6 devotees or something like that, brought them to Prabhupada. Each of them had a rose to give to Prabhupada, gave the rose to Prabhupada, the new disciples, students that I've made. Prabhupada was pleased, but Prabhupada said to him, "What about book distribution?" So this is what really tweaked him then. And he thought he was going to make devotees, and that was really what it was all about, and it is. But at the time, Prabhupada wanted, if you're going to be in America, you should see this dissemination of my books. So he had to wrap his head around that, and that's how he started then to connect more with me, because that's what I was doing. And anyway, he traveled around America and used to go to the Sunday feasts and give a lecture, and then ask the temple president, are there any of the guests that have been coming regularly who are maybe, I can just push them over the edge here and get them to join. And so then they would send those people into a darshan after the class and after prasadam, further questions. And if they were young men, he'd say, wouldn't you like to travel around the world? Show them a picture of the bus in the back of the Godhead magazine, and it was just down the street. And so then he was stealing the brahmacharis, potential brahmacharis, out of the temple to join the bus party with this real romantic, kind of presentation. That caused a big stir. That caused a big stir in North America. The temple presidents were revolting. It was a very interesting chapter of ISKCON. But he was successful. He started distributing books and through his party and so forth. And then the end of that year came around, and we all would go to India, for the festival to be with Prabhupada. And so I had a party of my own, a book distribution party, and we were remitting more funds to the book fund than anyone else. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj wanted to come back to India to Prabhupada with being the leader on a book distribution, which was a noble aspiration. But Ramaswara, he was a figures man, so he did the figures all the time, so and the counting, and my party was ahead, of Krishna Maharaj's party. And so what we did, Ramaswara and I, we rigged it, and we let Tamal win, so that he could go back. I never told him this, but so he could go to India and say that he was the top book distributor and please Prabhupada. Because he was giving veiled threats that if he didn't win, then maybe he'd just go back to India or something. So we wanted him to stay and distribute books in North America. So he won, and then the following year, then he threatened that, well, if I have to compete with Tripurari Maharaj, my sannyasi godbrother, and all these householders are running these temples both, then I might as well just, give this up here. And he said, therefore, I'm not going to do this unless you join me. Your party joins my party, or our parties join together, then I'm going to give it up. So then I had to talk to Ramaswara. He's talking about giving up the whole thing, and I said, what are we going to do? So we thought, okay, I guess we should merge our parties together. He was probably a bluff on his part. He was a little bit like that. So when I agreed, then we went to see Prabhupada, and Tamal said, Tripurari Maharaj and I have decided to merge our parties together, and we were wondering what to call it. I didn't think of that, but that's what he was. And so his party was called the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party, and ours was called the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Traveling Sankirtan Party. We named our party after Prabhupada. He named his after the Radha Damodar deities that were the deities of Vishnu Jan Maharaj and the prime deities of all the traveling buses and so forth. So Prabhupada obviously deferred to the name that referred to Krishna rather than his own. So then and then the Radha Damodar Traveling Sankirtan Party incorporated all the devotees who were selling books at airports and so forth. So that was a very interesting chapter, and that's when I, got to know him a lot more. He had very close relationship with Prabhupada. He knew Prabhupada very well. I wrote something about his passing when he passed away, in remembrance of him, and his disciples who organized that wrote to me afterwards and said that it was the most feelingful offering that an insightful offering that they came into the publication that they put out at the time. So I had some feeling for him. We had differences in style. We were very different, but I could understand his earnestness and he could understand mine. When to finish this long answer to your question, I, by force of circumstances, as I saw it, left ISKCON after the departure of Prabhupada. We communicated as well on 2 occasions. When Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj passed away, I called him and I informed him of that. And he was very taken by that. And he had just read a book that I had written. Really, that was a long introduction to a book of poems of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj that he had, original compositions of his in Sanskrit. I think it was called Kirtan Manjusha. And he liked that very much because at that time he had just started to hear from Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. So he was, some of the subjects that were in that book, Kirtan Manjusha, were relevant to what he was hearing from Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj at the time. So he kind of really connected with that. And then it was in 1995, some years later, that again, he came to visit me in Vrindavan, and he asked me to join him in an effort to help the governing body commission of ISKCON understand the principle of Siksha Guru, which he thought I had understood in my steadfastness in terms of connection to Sridhar Maharaj at the cost of having a place in ISKCON, because that wasn't allowed in ISKCON at the time to have a Siksha Guru outside of ISKCON. But he understood that what I had done was correct philosophically and from a point of view of heartfelt connection and so forth. And so at the time he was taking Siksha from Narayana Maharaj, so he wanted to make the point in the ISKCON society that what we had done is what he was doing, and it was actually philosophically sound and so forth. So I agreed to help him. That started another chapter, but I was then surprised, shortly after that, to hear of his passing, which was a tragic event. But I knew him well, and he was a very capable organizer and preacher, and he had a lot of affection, for the devotees, and a very, I would say, deep relationship with Prabhupada from previous lives. Tamal Krishna Maharaj Ki Jai. He's not an ordinary man. Okay. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that was a long answer, but it seemed to be the only way to answer. I could have gone on. It was hard to. I could talk for hours and hours and hours about those histories. So a little glimpse into that. Thank you for the question. Any other short question maybe we can deal with?
Well, we have Krishna Das. Maybe he can keep his question short, and you can
tell me that
keep
you
your
have
answer short.
Question.
Krishna Das.
Dandavats, good morning, Guru Maharaj. So my question is just mainly dealing with a quote I remember hearing from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur about that one should not share one's bhajan or not readily talk about one's bhajan with others. And I guess this was kind of confusing to me, or I didn't really understand how to apply that practically, because from my understanding, one of the hallmarks of Gaudiya Sampradaya is, bringing Harinam Sankirtan public and, sharing, with others and trying to, give the mercy to others. And I guess I was just wondering if you could clarify this instruction from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Yeah, he's echoing the caution of Narottam Thakur, and it's with regard to the inner life of a devotee. And there's a place for sharing that, and there's a place for not sharing that. And so, for example, with peers, then one can share one's experience and practice and so forth, and get inspiration and provide inspiration and so on and so forth. With those who are not as advanced, who may be students in comparison to oneself, then one will exercise some caution and will not be able to say everything. What their understanding is will have to be taken into consideration in terms of what you might say about the practice, about your experience, and so forth and so on. That's the general idea. Now, Narottam's point is that the inner life, if it starts to develop, then there is a possibility that one will broadcast that in a way that brings attention to oneself. So that is compared to like a candle. But if you bring attention to yourself, then that may blow out the candle. And so therefore you should keep it to yourself, but doesn't mean it won't be revealed to those who are qualified and who will be helped by that, and so on and so forth. Now, therefore, we find an instance in which Bhakti Vinod reveals his inner life. It's one thing to talk about it in general, Madhurya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, and the virtues of them, and so forth. We published a book called "Oh My Friend, Oh My Friend," that written together by Ashram Maharaj, and there's Prabhupada saying so many things about his affinity for Sakya Rasa, but he's not talking about his identity within the context of that. That's more internal. It's so. But we find in Bhaktivinoda's writings, as I was saying, that in some places he shares that. So that's a rare occasion. It may be done, and I think he did that to instruct the world in some respects. But generally, the caution is because, as I say, as this starts to develop, one can speak about it in such a way that will draw attention to oneself, and that's the last thing that one wants to do. So it's also to use a biblical saying, don't throw pearls before the swine. So people are not going to understand it, and potentially, and then you subject that precious thing to abuse and misunderstanding. So it doesn't really apply to someone in your situation where you're going to tell people about the practices, you're going to share your experiences with other devotees and get feedback and so on and so forth. That's all well and good. But bhajan, to really, and it's one thing to put the candle in the heart. It's another thing to light it, keep it lit. So a lot has to be said to put the candle in the heart. What is it? What is it? What is Madhurya Rasa? People like to use the term Manjari Bhava. What is it? What is the tattva? Rupa Goswami's books, both of them actually, Ujjwal Nilmani and or I should say, Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu and the sequel, Ujjwal Nilmani, which deals extensively with Madhurya Rasa. These are all books of tattva, actually. It's Rasa Tattva. It's the underlying philosophical principles and how it works, kind of the math of it all, if you will. Some of it's quite technical, actually. Of course, there's nice and rich and sweet examples to illustrate different points and different aspects of that sentiment, Madhurya Rasa. So, these types of books are about, like I say, like putting the candle in the heart, and then gradually it will be lit. And then when it's lit, boy, you got something here that everybody's not going to be able to take part in. That you need time to yourself to take care of that, to culture that, and so forth. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. That helps a lot.
Okay. Well, that's it. We only got 4 questions. Got 2 there.
We did good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful answers, and
Okay.
got a lot of smiles out back there. So
Okay. Well, we hope all devotees and people in Ukraine will be spared. It's very troublesome circumstances. Heartbreaking to see innocent people like that trampled upon. So demons are not a fantasy; they exist. And we should try to avoid them and hope for the best and try to stay sheltered in Krishna. Krishna Katha and Krishna Kirtan. Hari Hari Bol.
thank you so much. Hare Krishna. So devotees, just stay on 1 second. I'll just tell you what's coming up for the next month or so in classes. Tomorrow is the last day of the month, and Atulananda Maharaj will be finishing his series of classes on the Chatra Shloki of the Bhagavat. And then we go into the classes for March, which is a special month of classes dedicated to Lord Chaitanya and his advent. On Mondays, Hari Priya Dasi will be giving classes on chanting as the prayer of the heart. And on Tuesdays, Guru Nishta will be giving classes on Hari Nam Chintamani, how to chant Shuddha Nam. And on Wednesdays, Gaur Sundar will be giving class on exploring the 3rd verse of the Shikshastakam. And Thursday, Brigupad will be giving classes on Sri Chaitanya's holy land, Navadvip Dham Parikrama. And Fridays, Ashram Maharaj will be giving class on the impediments to the touchstone of the holy name. And on Saturdays, Shamananda Das will be giving class as the sun rises and sets. Gaudiya Vaishnavism goes west. And then Sunday, we're back here with questions and answers. And there'll be some special classes as well. Guru Maharaj will be in the Raleigh-Durham area, Chapel Hill area for 10 days in March. So there'll be classes. We'll get more information on when and how those classes will be presented. So thank you, my dear devotees. Wonderful to see everyone. We got a big crowd. I was a little worried when it was almost 25 after and there were 4 people on the call. I was like, oh my, but everyone's getting on at the last minute these days. All right, well, great seeing everyone and have a beautiful week and Hare Krishna.